Alex Albon is having a tough start to the 2020 Formula One season at Red Bull, prompting his old friend George Russell to say he's been made to look an idiot. Quite strange to think that he could have won the first race of the season, but things have been a lot more difficult since then. And to help me, Glenn Freeman, go through what's going on for Albon at Red Bull, I've got Scott Mitchell and Ed Straw with me. Scott, what's really going on with Albon to prompt these comments from Russell?
Well, while he could have won the first race of the season, it's worth pointing out that he was sort of pretty anonymous in that Grand Prix until circumstances went in his favour, and he was massively off the pace in the first half of the Styrian Grand Prix as well. And then Russell's comments came after Albon was knocked out of Q2 for the Hungarian Grand Prix, where he was actually slower, I think, in qualifying than Russell's Williams, which if you'd have said last year that a Red Bull would be slower than Williams in 2020, then you'd imagine that driver's Pierre Gasly and probably going to get sacked again. So basically it hasn't been a particularly fast start to the season for Albon. He's had difficulties, probably been exaggerated in certain circumstances, which I'm sure we're going to get into in this video. But basically, Russell was inclined to jump to his friend's defence. They've known each other for years, since they were kids and karting together. He's obviously looked at the results of that qualifying session and gone, well, hang on a second, this isn't right. And there is a bit of pressure on Albon already, 3 races in. There's always going to be pressure when you're in that Red Bull seat. So I think Russell's sort of it's quite endearing in a way, if you don't really have these sort of close friendships in Formula One. So he's been minded to defend his mate in a very, very strong way, because obviously the suggestion that he's being made to look like an idiot does kind of make it sound like he's being stitched up.
Yeah, and Max Verstappen, of course, waded in, perhaps telling George to keep his nose out of Red Bull's business. But picking up on Scott's final point there, Ed, should Red Bull be taking some responsibility for Albon's struggles?
Well, we have to remember it's in Red Bull's interest for Albon to succeed. They're not spending hundreds of millions to put 2 cars on the grid to have one of them wasted. It's in their interest for Albon to pick up points in the Constructors' Championship to help improve the car. And actually, although it suits Max Verstappen to be the undisputed number 1 driver, it suits him to have a strong wingman. You can say Red Bull's harsh on its drivers perhaps, but this is the highest level of elite sport, and it's ultimately down to the driver to make the most of the opportunity he's been given in terms of being brought into F1, in terms of being put into one of the 3 biggest teams. The team has a part to play in this process, but at heart, the driver is the one that has to do the maximising of this opportunity. Albon is a robust character. He has got ability. We know he can race. We know he's quick in qualifying. What he needs to do is look inward at himself to make the best of what he can do, to leave no stone unturned and just be brutally, brutally honest with himself. You can't have any excuses at this level. You've got to be ruthless. You've got to look at everything you've done and make the best of it. That's what the greats always do, and Red Bull can contribute to that process, but ultimately it's down to Albon to deliver.
Red Bull's not exactly innocent in this, as Ed's hinted at, and basically it's got a difficult car. The RB16 has an aero imbalance, which is catching out Albon and Max Verstappen, and Verstappen's so good and so much more experienced than Albon that he can basically drive around this problem. Not perfectly, he's not going to win, score poles and win races in the car in its current form, but he can get into Q3. He can put a car that's that tricky that Albon got knocked out in Q2 in Hungary, and Verstappen can put it 7th on the grid and then finish 2nd on Sunday. So Verstappen sort of masks this problem, and it can make it look one-sided. So there are always these sort of suggestions that Red Bull's trying to hobble its second car because it favours Verstappen. Ed's covered all the reasons why that's nonsense, but the simple fact is, when a car is this troubled, you don't need a huge difference between the drivers for that gap to suddenly be exaggerated. So Albon's not doing a terrible job, but because he's not doing quite as good a job as Verstappen, it's made to look worse than it is. They've had problems with upgrades. They've had different mix and match parts on the car across the Hungary weekend, for example, and even the second weekend in Austria. So it's not that he's not getting the same treatment as Verstappen. It's just he's got a bad car, the same as Verstappen's got, and he doesn't quite have the tools to get as much out of it as his teammate does.
And Scott, you and I have talked, I think, in the past about how Verstappen kind of tears through Red Bull's junior ranks because he's so good and it's so hard for anyone else to get to his level. But Ed, earlier on, Pierre Gasly's name came up, of course, and Albon will be wary of that because it was Gasly's demotion that got him the Red Bull drive in the first place. Are we just seeing a repeat of the Gasly scenario playing out a year later?
Well, it sounds like the same story, doesn't it? That of a promising young driver being promoted into the Red Bull first team and struggling alongside Verstappen. But I do think there are some very, very big differences when you dig into the detail here. Gasly frustrated the team because he was getting stuck in races. He was getting lost on setup, going around in circles, constantly obsessing over details like changing the seat, chasing the setup of the car, the performance of the car in individual corners, rather than looking at the global picture. They struggled to get through to Gasly, and in the end they decided it just could not go on. Now Albon in Red Bull, he's been incisive in races. Even Hungary, he didn't qualify well, actually did have a very good race coming through to 5th place, so he's still doing better in the races, even if the pace differential is concerning. Also, from the start, his attitude and his approach has impressed the team. They've been pleased with that, and although the current progress will have tested that a little bit, I think there's enough differences in the way this has gone to mean that the outcome could be very, very different to that which faced Gasly with being demoted and Albon taking his place.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily at this point think that Albon's under immediate pressure. He's got the support of the team, but crucially in a slightly different way. In the past, Gasly was always sort of being spoken of in terms of, oh, he just needs time, he just needs to change his approach, he just needs this, he just needs that. We're going to give him that time, we'll do everything he can. It's slightly different with Albon. They're almost on the offensive. Basically, Christian Horner saying, well, I don't know what you're all talking about. He's doing a great job. Why are you criticising him? He's basically telling us to back off of him. And it's a subtle difference, but I think it's really important. And at the moment, Red Bull doesn't have anyone sort of primed to move into that position. Maybe Gasly doing a great job at AlphaTauri will change that. Maybe a driver like Sergio Perez coming on the market will change that. But right now, Albon's in a really good position. If he keeps going the way he's going, doing what he's doing off track and making small improvements on track, I'm pretty sure he's got a safe, immediate future at Red Bull.
So no immediate call-up for Daniel Kvyat back at the A-team anytime soon. We'll see what happens with Albon over the coming weeks. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed to the channel already and helped us surpass 300,000 subscribers recently. We really appreciate that. Leave a like and a comment on the Red Bull situation here if you enjoyed this video. And we'll be back very soon to talk about something else in the world of Formula One.